Imagine the dusty streets of mid-19th century St. Louis, the thunderous roar of steamboats slicing through the waters of the Mississippi, the acrid smell of coal and smoke pouring from factory chimneys, the cloying aroma of whiskey drifting from wide-open saloon doors, the excited shouts of card and poker players, and everywhere, the shadowy figures of suspicious characters slipping through dark alleys in search of easy prey. This was the Wild West in its infancy, a city teeming with European immigrants, river traders, adventurers, and those who preferred to live off other people's hard-earned goods. It was precisely during this chaotic and dangerous period, from 1857 to 1867, that the St. Louis Police Department became a pioneer in criminology. They began systematically photographing arrested criminals. These images, captured on daguerreotypes, ambrotypes, and early albumen prints, are considered one of the earliest and most comprehensive collections of mugshots in U.S. history, known as the Rogues Gallery. Stern, often gaunt or defiantly calm faces stare back at us across a century and a half. Garrotters, river thieves, counterfeiters, poisoners, horse thieves, pickpockets, and even female thieves. Many of them were immigrants who fled poverty in the Old World only to find new troubles here. These exceedingly rare photographs have survived in the archives of the Missouri Historical Society, Missouri History Museum, and open a window into America's criminal underworld at the dawn of photography as a tool of justice. The criminals. Mike Jordan, garrotter. Before robbing his victim, he would sneak up from behind and strangle them until they lost consciousness, a classic garrotter of that era. John Regan, arrested on suspicion of a series of thefts from passenger cabins on steamboats, a typical river thief operating during the golden age of Mississippi River navigation. Miller, first name illegible. Counterfeiter, specialized in forging banknotes, deceiving merchants and bankers throughout the region. Charlie Jones, alias Williams, noted as serving time in the Missouri State Penitentiary for grand larceny up to December 1858, possibly a case of mistaken identity. Such mix-ups were common back then. Shez Charles Jameson, just 19 years old, born in New York. In 1860, he was serving time in the Missouri County Jail, specific charge not detailed in the archive. Fitzgerald, first name not recorded. Con man, a classic swindler who deceived trusting citizens with all sorts of schemes. Ed Buckley, 26 years old, height about 170 centimeters, Irish immigrant, multiple arrests for theft and robbery, a typical street recidivist. Armstrong, first name not recorded, arrested for theft. During his arrest, he boldly told the officer that he was a rebel prisoner or insurgent in jail, likely alluding to involvement in the Civil War or prisoner of war status. Charles Rammelsberg, German-born, arrested for fraud and counterfeiting, one of many European immigrants involved in making fake money. John Ellis, arrested in September 1866 for horse stealing, a classic Wild West horse thief where horses were worth a fortune. John Georgian, pimp and racketeer, controlled part of the city's shadowy business, prostitution and extortion. Hiram Cole, arrested on suspicion of murdering his wife. She died from poisoning, strychnine or arsenic, shortly after accusing him of infidelity, a typical domestic drama of the time. Dave Marshall, arrested on suspicion of pocket-picking and stealing ladies' purses, a virtuoso pickpocket who worked crowds. John Fight, Irish immigrant, convicted of grand larceny and sentenced to 2 years in the Missouri State Penitentiary. Elizabeth Vollman, female thief, arrested for stealing jewelry, served time in the state prison, likely 1865 to 1867, but was pardoned by Governor Thomas Fletcher and released early. Joseph Johnson, arrested for embezzlement, offered bail but couldn't post it, so he waited behind bars for trial. John Lockhart, reason for arrest not preserved in surviving records, one of the archive's many mysteries. Unknown citizen, name and reason for arrest completely lost to time, just like so many fates from that era. Bonus, St. Louis City Jail, circa 1850. A grim stone building with thick bars, heavy iron doors, and gloomy cells, exactly where many of these individuals were held. A typical mid-19th century American prison, the place where most of these photographs were taken. These images turned ordinary prisoners into eternal witnesses to their crimes, marking the first steps towards modern forensic photography. All photographs are taken from the archive of the Nebraska State Historical Society. Mrs. G.K. Adams, 21 years old, height 165 centimeters, weight 58 kilograms. Arrested on April 12, 1900 for blackmail. She listed her profession as prostitute. Charles Martin, 34 years old, height 187 centimeters, weight 86 kilograms. Arrested on February 24, 1898. One of 3 participants in the safe robbery at a bank vault on February 15, 1898, which resulted in the theft of money and valuables worth $2,400, or approximately $81,600 in modern equivalent. His capture involved the Omaha City Police, the largest city in Nebraska, and an agent from the Pinkerton Detective Agency. The arrest did not go without a shootout. Upon Martin, they found gold watches and $565 in cash, a little over $19,000 in modern equivalent, most likely his share of the robbery. At the police station, he introduced himself as Charles Martin. However, in the hotel room where he was detained, several letters addressed to Charles Davis were found. Also, in an interview with a local newspaper, one of the police officers involved in his arrest suggested that he was actually the well-known safecracker and bank robber Sam Welsh. Minnie Bradley, 27 years old, height 158 centimeters, weight 60 kilograms. Arrested on December 11, 1902 for theft from a person, a term in police documents of that time usually denoting pickpocketing. She listed her profession as prostitute. The description accompanying the photograph notes that she wore a wig. Alberto Interchago, arrested in February 1914 for assault with intent to inflict bodily harm. To combat lice in prisons, male inmates typically had all hair on their head and face shaved off, after which additional photographs were taken. However, female inmates' hair was not touched. James Pappas, 22 years old, height 187 centimeters, weight 64 kilograms. Arrested on October 24, 1926. He was the manager of a department store insured for a large sum. He convinced one of his employees to set fire to the store in order to collect the insurance money. Mattie Brown, arrested on September 25, 1917 for theft from a person. She was sentenced to 1 year of imprisonment. Albert Johnson, arrested in March 1885 for grand larceny. He was sentenced to 1.5 years of imprisonment. George Ray, arrested in the late 1890s for manslaughter, unintentional murder. F.P. Robinson, 30 years old, height 167 centimeters, weight 52 kilograms. Arrested on November 21, 1901.
He paid for a glass of beer in a saloon, which cost 5 cents, with a dollar bill, and, as expected, received 95 cents in change. But here's the catch. He gave not an American dollar, but a Mexican one, which at the time was only 45 cents. Thus, he made a pure profit of 50 cents, a little over $16 in modern equivalent. Jenny Lester, arrested in March 1914 for procuring for unlawful sexual intercourse. She was sentenced to imprisonment for a term of 1 to 3 years.
All photographs are from the archive of the Nebraska State Historical Society. Herbert Cochran, 23 years old, height 172 centimeters, weight 64 kilograms. Arrested on November 24, 1899 for burglary. He worked as a tailor in general. Why his head is shaved is not specified, but in Nebraska prisons, heads were often shaved bald to combat lice. George Leonard, arrested on December 23, 1901 for burglary. He worked as an accountant. Frank Carter, 46 years old, height 170 centimeters, weight 61 kilograms. Born in Ireland, birth name Patrick Murphy, known as the Omaha Sniper. In February 1926 in Omaha, mechanic William McDevitt was shot dead with a silenced pistol. Later, Dr. A.D. Searles was killed. Then a railroad police detective was shot in Council Bluffs, Iowa. Victims were shot through windows at home. Newspapers advised not to turn on lights in the evenings. Panic in the city, shootouts at homes and a pharmacy. Captured 2 weeks after the first murder near Council Bluffs. Confessed to everything, claimed 43 victims, only 2 murders proven. In 1925, he was in an Iowa prison for cattle rustling. Sentenced to death by electric chair on June 24, 1927. Last words, let the juice flow. William G. Lee, arrested in December 1919 for alcohol smuggling. Nebraska had prohibition from May 1, 1917. Sentenced to 6 months to 2 years in prison, temporarily released to visit his dying wife, returned and served until July 4, 1921. John Reed, arrested in May 1906 for manslaughter. On May 13th, Marshal Arthur Moss was dealing with drunken soldiers in Crawford Park. A fight broke out with Sergeant John Reed and Private Jordan Taylor of the 10th Cavalry Regiment, a black regiment. Reed shot Moss. They fled and hid with an old lady named Edna Ewing. Taylor was killed during pursuit. Reed was captured. Rumors of an assault on the jail by Reed's comrades. He was transferred to Chadron under guard. Sentence, 7 years in prison. Mary Shannon, arrested in May 1925 for mayhem, causing serious bodily injury. Sentenced to 2 years in prison. James Collins, 23 years old, arrested on May 12, 1897 for burglary. Worked as a tailor. Previously escaped from custody, caught again, head bandaged, lip split, reason not specified. On March 19, 1898, sentenced to 5 years in prison. Nora Currier, 22 years old, height 160 centimeters, arrested on March 31, 1901 for horse theft. Also known as Red or Ginger Nora, distinctive feature, scar on forehead. Bertha Liebecke, 20 years old, height 157 centimeters, weight 52 kilograms, arrested on June 11, 1899. Known under many aliases, Bertha Lieb, Jenny Jennings, Bertha Nixon, J. Armstrong, Carrie Jones, Bessie Miles, Minnie Swilson, Bertha Siegel. One of the most famous pickpockets in the Midwest, Nebraska, Illinois, Kansas, Missouri, and Iowa. Modus operandi, pretended to faint into a gentleman's arms, then picked his pockets, leading to the nickname Fainting Bertha. Profession listed in records, prostitute. There is a later photo, late 19-teens to 1920s.
Jim Ling, 31 years old, height 167 centimeters, weight 47 kilograms. Arrested on June 3, 1898 for keeping an opium den. Profession listed in records, thief. Stephen Schock, arrested in November 1916 for grand larceny. Sentenced to 2 years in prison. In February 1918, after serving his term, he enlisted in the U.S. Army. Frank L. Dinsmore, on December 4, 1999, in the Odessa boarding house, Nebraska, a double murder. Boarding house owner Fred Lowy was shot in the bedroom. Tenant Lillian Dinsmore was shot in the kitchen. Suspect Lillian's husband, Frank, a charismatic man. Unhappy in marriage, obsessed with Mrs. Lowy, seduced her, planned to kill his wife and his lover's husband. Lillian's brothers accused him of using hypnotic power. Mrs. Lowy confirmed it. The press blew up the story of a hypnotist murderer. Frank denied everything. Convicted of double murder, initially sentenced to hanging, later commuted to life imprisonment.
All photographs are from the archive of the Nebraska State Historical Society. Goldie Williams, also known as Meg Murphy. Height 152 centimeters, weight 49 kilograms. Arrested on September 29, 1898. Profession listed as prostitute. Residence, Chicago. Distinctive features, broken left index finger, cut on right wrist. Jake Voland. Arrested in March 1931. Crime, theft. During the Great Depression, he stole 10 chickens worth $5 from a farm in Gibbon using his car. He claimed the car was stolen. Convicted and sentenced to 1 year in prison. Ruby Fox. Crime, burglary. Met Myrtle Hetrick in the Women's Reformatory in York, Nebraska. Escaped with her help from a certain man. Both were caught in Casper, Wyoming. Requested transfer to Lincoln Prison instead of returning to York. Lola Lopez. Arrested in 1922. Crime, manslaughter. Accomplice of Cicero Estrada. Participated in the murder of Stephen Pana, beating, strangulation, and robbery in Sydney. Arrested in Greeley, Colorado. Claimed she was innocent of the murder but knew about it. Released after 2 years, 2 months, and 22 days. Noted for wearing a gold pendant. James Whitewater, possibly Native American origin, Whitewater. Crime, manslaughter of 2 people. Served time in Nebraska prison from 1872 to 1889. Converted to Christianity. Granted early release under a new law. The governor could pardon after 10 years for good behavior. Upon release, he rolled on the grass with joy. Amos Holloman. Served time in prison at least 3 times. Specific crimes and dates not specified. Alv Little. Crime, bank robbery. Sentenced to 12 to 15 years. Released after 2 years and 7 days when another person confessed. Received $2,500 compensation. Thomas Whitney, also known as the Professor. 33 years old, height 174 centimeters, weight 96 kilograms. Arrested on December 14, 1897. Crime, obtaining money by false pretenses. Clairvoyant, astrologer, and palmist in Omaha. Charged $1 from men and 50 cents from women for predictions about love, law, and business. Arrested after a client complaint, but released after returning the money. Tattoos on both hands. Bert Martin, real name Lena Martin. Crime, horse theft. Cowboy in Keapaa County. Convicted and sent to Nebraska prison. After 11 months, a cellmate revealed she was a woman. Transferred to the women's section on September 22, 1901. Nanny Hutchinson and Charles Hutchinson. On November 1, 1903, Eli Feasel, a farmer from the intercommunal territory of Botswana, went missing. Nanny Hutchinson, his housekeeper, told police that he had gone to visit his son in Kansas. No trace of him was found in Kansas, and Nanny and her 21-year-old son, Charles, came under suspicion. They were taken into custody, but for lack of evidence of involvement in the disappearance of Feasel, they were soon released. In the following year, Mr. Stanley, who acquired the Feasel farm, came across a fresh grave while working in the field. The police found a human hand, several hairs, and fragments of clothing, including a coat pocket with an empty whiskey bottle inside. Footprints of 2 people were found near the grave. The size matched the size of the Hutchinsons' shoes. In addition, employees of the local livery stable reported that Charles had rented a horse cart a few days earlier, saying he was going to a ranch in the neighboring Amboy intercommunal territory. Charles returned the cart on time, but the horses looked suspiciously tired for the short trip to Amboy, and the cart itself stank terribly. Investigators assumed that the Hutchinsons, having seen Stanley begin work near the grave of Feasel, got scared and hid the corpse. As a result, the mother and son were found guilty of manslaughter.